Hello, dear viewers of my video. I hope you enjoy watching it and look forward to your feedback in the comments. They say the world opens up when you get a degree, that the doors once closed to you, those beautiful heavy oak ones with brass handles and salary benefits, will finally swing open with a welcome sign just for you. But when I, Bridget Moreau, graduated with honors in international relations, all I saw was rejection email after rejection email, and doors that didn't swing so much as remain sealed shut with passive-aggressive wording like, "While we were impressed with your application." Impressed? Really? I had just survived 4 years of economic theory, negotiation simulations, post-colonial diplomacy essays, and a year-long thesis on cross-border policy conflicts. I could explain the history of the EU in my sleep. But apparently, none of that qualified me to make coffee in the real world. I applied everywhere: UN internships, NGO admin roles, private firms that whispered promises of policy analysis. But months passed, and nothing came through. And with every passing week, my parents' looks turned from proud to concerned. So, when a tiny logistics company called Vanarax offered me a secretary position, I took it. No hesitation, no ego. I bought a few plain blouses, practiced my phone voice, and told myself this was just a stepping stone. The job was, frankly, humiliating. I filed papers for people who didn't know the difference between Kosovo and Kazakhstan, made travel bookings for managers who couldn't navigate Google Calendar, and took notes during meetings I wasn't supposed to contribute to. But I listened. I always listened. That's when I noticed something. The clients calling in, small manufacturers, export managers, freight companies, they were frustrated. Not because of logistics, because nobody in our office seemed to understand or care about the complexities of their needs. One guy, Ravi from Mumbai, was furious that a shipment kept getting delayed in Rotterdam. "Every time I call, your team gives me a copy-paste answer," he told me. "No one looks at the customs documentation. No one even reads the damn file." So I read the file. And he was right. There was a small discrepancy between the harmonized system code listed on the manifest and the product described. Customs flagged it. It wasn't a shipping problem, it was a paperwork nuance. I flagged it up to our operations director, got told, "That's not your concern," and got a bonus later that month when Ravi extended his contract. But no one told me the bonus was because of that. Still, I kept doing it. Quietly, discreetly. I learned each client's quirks. I remembered who preferred email and who needed voice calls. I tracked shipment delays and flagged regulatory shifts that might affect their routes. Stuff I remembered from my degree, but never thought I'd use while printing labels. 3 months in, a regional manager called me directly. "Hey, Bridget, can you check on that Peru shipment? Not the tracking. I want to know if the carrier filed the phytosanitary clearance." That wasn't my job, but it became my job. Slowly, subtly, clients started asking for me by name. When I went on a 3-day vacation, 2 clients delayed meetings just to wait for me. I was still the secretary, but now I was also something else. Someone who solved problems. Someone who understood them. And that made certain people in the office very uncomfortable. One afternoon, while I was reviewing trade compliance notes for a client in Warsaw, I overheard our sales lead mutter, "She's just a secretary. Why the hell are they looping her into contract renewals?" But the clients kept coming. In fact, our churn rate dropped by 28% in 6 months. Nobody wanted to switch vendors when they had someone like me. Someone who remembered their daughter's name, their shipment bottlenecks, and how to talk to port authorities in 2 different languages. I wasn't just being polite, I was building trust. And trust, it turns out, is the most underappreciated asset in logistics. The irony? The leadership didn't even realize it was me holding the client base together. I was the invisible glue. Efficient, invisible, disposable. Until the day everything changed. There's something funny about stability. It makes you believe you're safe, that your work has earned you a seat at the table, even if it's the wobbly one in the corner. But just when you start to believe that your quiet competence will be enough, someone new walks in and flips the table entirely. By the start of my second year at Vanarax, My role had quietly evolved far beyond what my contract had described. I was still Bridget Moreau, administrative secretary on paper, but the paper didn't show the late-night emails I wrote to resolve shipment crises or the panicked 6 a.m. calls I answered from international clients whose goods were stuck in customs. I kept a mug labeled Secretary of Everything, and I wasn't even joking. I handled executive calendars and rebooked flights, yes, but I also rewrote compliance summaries, proofread contract amendments, built shipping spreadsheets that replaced overpriced vendor software, and even created a mini crash course for new hires about freight categories and international shipping documents. The CEO, Mr. Alwyn, once joked that I had a better grasp of our global operations than the actual logistics team. He wasn't wrong. But for all that, I wasn't promoted. I wasn't even acknowledged beyond the occasional, "Thanks, Bridget," tossed my way like a tip in a jar. I didn't mind, not really. I was building something, slowly, steadily. And deep down, I believed that eventually, someone upstairs would notice that the only reason our clients hadn't fled to cheaper competitors was because of the girl in the gray office chair who remembered their dog's name and reminded them that their shipment needed a new certificate of origin. Then, one Monday morning, the office buzzed with unusually formal energy. A new hire was starting, apparently, a big fish from a corporate consulting firm, brought in to restructure operations and reduce inefficiencies. I barely registered it. We'd had efficiency audits before, and they always fizzled into a new PDF template or two. Then I met him. Lucas Varick walked in like he already owned the place. Tall, slick, and absurdly well-dressed, he wore a watch that cost more than my college tuition and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His handshake was firm, dry, and over in a second, like he didn't want to waste skin cells on you. When he passed my desk that first morning, he didn't stop, didn't look, just walked straight into the executive conference room, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and something colder: detachment. For the first week, I kept my head down. Lucas moved through the office like a storm in a suit. He didn't observe. He intervened. He asked 2-minute questions in the middle of meetings and dismissed answers before they finished. He had PowerPoints ready before he'd learned half the staff's names, but the higher-ups adored him. Proactive, they said. Results-driven. What they didn't see was the way he glanced past people like they were assets on a ledger, useful or irrelevant. I knew the moment he noticed me. It was during a staff meeting where I was taking notes in the corner. The CFO asked a question about recurring shipping delays to Argentina, and before anyone could answer, I quietly handed over a report I'd prepared weeks ago. I'd color-coded the delays based on port backlogs and highlighted a workaround through Chile. Lucas glanced at me, then at the report. "You did this?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I've been monitoring trade route fluctuations for our Latin American clients since—" But he was already nodding. "Interesting," he muttered, then handed the paper to someone else, like it was a receipt. He didn't thank me, didn't ask how I knew what I knew. 3 days later, I was called to his office. His assistant, a stiff woman named Justine, with a voice like printer paper, simply said, "Mr. Varick would like to see you?" I walked in expecting a request, maybe a favor. Instead, Lucas sat at his glass desk, one leg crossed over the other, holding a manila folder with my name on the tab. "Bridget, right?" he said, as if we hadn't worked under the same roof for weeks. "Yes," I said, standing. He didn't offer me a seat. "I've reviewed your job description," he said, flipping the folder open without looking at it. "Administrative secretary. Duties include scheduling, filing, internal coordination, standard support role." I didn't speak. I knew better than to interrupt a performance. "We're streamlining," he said smoothly, "reducing redundant roles. I've concluded that your position is no longer relevant." The words landed like ice water. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You can pack your things," he said, already glancing back at his computer. "HR will handle the paperwork. You've got, 5 minutes? It was surreal. The folder in his hand contained a printed summary of duties written 3 years ago, not the real work I'd been doing for nearly 24 months. He hadn't asked anyone, not my supervisor, not a single client. He just decided. I swallowed my shock. I assume I'm allowed to gather my personal items? Of course, he said, already disinterested. Take your folder. Maybe it'll help you find a new job. He smirked, and that's when I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. I walked back to my desk with the calm of someone who's just remembered they hold the key to the vault. I opened my bottom drawer and pulled out one folder, just one. It wasn't labeled in any dramatic way, just client retention profiles, internal. But inside were 18 months of relationship data, loyalty trends, and communication summaries that no CRM could replicate. Notes on client preferences, workarounds I'd discovered, contracts that only closed because I'd intervened behind the scenes. The entire map of how Vanarax retained its clients in a ruthless market. Without me, those relationships were just accounts on a screen. Without me, they'd vanish. Lucas thought he was removing a secretary. He had no idea he'd just cut the heart out of the company's client base. I zipped my coat. As I reached the elevator, I heard him laughing with someone down the hall. I hope that folder helps her find a new job. He would stop laughing soon. And when he did, I would still be smiling. Because that folder? That wasn't a souvenir. It was a detonator. If Lucas Varick had a religion, it would be automation. Efficiency was his gospel, algorithms his scripture, and anything that involved human nuance, small talk, empathy, listening, was a sin against progress. 2 days after I walked out of Vanarax with a single folder under my arm, Lucas launched what he called the future of client services. I heard the phrase repeated in company newsletters, saw the updates on the company's LinkedIn, and even got a mass email sent, ironically, to my personal inbox, because someone forgot to take me off the distribution list. The new initiative was centered around a client portal. Sleek, minimalistic, optimized for speed. You logged in, selected from a drop-down menu what kind of service you needed. Shipment inquiry, customs help, routing assistance, etc., and picked a time from a rotating schedule. You could upload documents, select your region, even watch a video of Lucas himself welcoming you to a new era of client engagement. I nearly spit out my tea the first time I watched it. In the video, Lucas sat in a painfully modern office surrounded by abstract art and LED lighting. "We know your time is valuable," he said with a charismatic grin. "That's why we've eliminated the old-fashioned bottlenecks and introduced a digital interface designed to get you answers, fast. No delays, no distractions, just results." No distractions. That's what he thought I was. I was the distraction he'd deleted. And the sad part? He truly believed it. He believed that every ounce of value I brought to the company could be replicated by a drop-down menu and a scheduling bot. He was wrong. Let me tell you something about logistics clients, especially international ones. Yes, they want results, but they also want reassurance. They want someone who remembers that their last shipment to Durban got stuck in port because the customs official flagged the label font size. They want to talk to someone who says, "Oh yes, I remember that. It was 8-point Arial instead of 10-point Times New Roman, right?" That level of detail? It's not in any CRM. Because while Lucas was busy migrating data and centralizing touchpoints, I was doing something far less technical and far more powerful. I was paying attention. See, I'd spent 2 years building my own personal reference file. It started small, a few notes jotted down after client calls, a memory that someone preferred evening calls because of the time zone difference, or that a client's daughter was getting married and they'd be out of office for a week. Over time, it became something more, a living, breathing document that mapped not just client accounts, but client humanity. Tempest Livingwell, head of catering company, allergic to mango, loves vintage cookbooks, especially from the 1940s. Mentioned her grandma's scone recipe once, which led to a 12K consultation booking when I asked about it again 3 weeks later. Roderick Yates owns specialty bookstores, always places orders in Q4. Passionate about Sherlock Holmes memorabilia. Don't rush him on calls, he values being listened to. Daughter is in her final year of lit studies. Ask about her thesis. Mei Hua Logistics. Don't contact on Chinese New Year, ever. Family owned. Deep respect for tradition. Refused a competitor contract after I remembered to send a card during the Dragon Boat Festival. None of that data was in Lucas's system, because you can't check a box for remembered my grandma's recipe or asked about my son's surgery. Lucas believed he had all the information. He'd proudly shown off his CRM dashboard during one team meeting, color-coded graphs, client activity scores, last invoice summaries. He even had a filter called at-risk accounts, based entirely on missed logins and open tickets. But what about the clients who hadn't logged in because they were waiting for me to call them? What about the ones who didn't open a ticket because they trusted I'd resolve the issue before they even noticed? That Friday, 2 weeks after my departure, I got a call. Bridget? Hi, it's Terry Lint. Terry and her husband Gavin ran a boutique winery in Napa. We'd spoken dozens of times, mostly in the early mornings when she walked their vineyard. She always sounded half asleep until I mentioned her dog, Tannen, and then she perked up. I got an email from some new rep. Karsten? Camden? I don't know. Said we had to re-enter our preferences into a new platform. She paused. Bridget, I don't know what half the words in that form mean. And frankly, I don't want to. I smiled. What do you need help with, Terry? I need someone who knows we prefer coastal routes in the summer because of bottle temperature. Someone who remembers that we don't like carriers that use shrink wrap, and someone who doesn't sound like a chatbot. I'm still happy to help however I can, I said gently. I figured you would, she said. So tell me, are you planning something new? I hesitated, because until that moment, I hadn't seriously considered starting anything. I'd left with one folder, not a business plan. But the question lingered. Was I planning something new? That weekend, I got 5 more calls. Then 12. Most just checking in. A few asking if I'd ever consider going independent. One flat-out offering to fund my own consulting agency. None of these people had clicked through Lucas's portal. They had clicked into something else. Something you can't automate. Trust. And the best part? Every call, every offer, every expression of loyalty that came my way was based on nothing more than the fact that I'd listened, remembered, followed up. Not because a system told me to, but because I cared. Lucas Varick thought he'd replaced me with a web page, but what he didn't understand was this. A website can schedule your meeting. It can't remember your daughter's name. After Lucas Varick laughed and dismissed me with that smug, I hope that folder helps you find a new job, I walked out of his office with a smile on my face, but not because I was okay, because I knew something he didn't. I had already started preparing for war. See, I knew from the second he arrived, before he even learned anyone's name, that my days at Vanarax were numbered. People like Lucas didn't see value in the things you couldn't graph. He liked things he could measure, ROI, touchpoints, CRM ticket closures. He didn't understand how many of our clients stayed because they liked the voice that picked up the phone, or how some of our largest contracts weren't renewed because of price or speed, but because I remembered birthdays, delays, and disasters, and walked them through each one. Lucas didn't care about that. And so, I started watching him with the same attention to detail I gave my clients. Every side comment he made in meetings, every "we can cut here" post-it, he slid onto a budget spreadsheet. I took mental notes the same way I used to jot down who liked their emails short and who wanted long, detailed breakdowns. But the most important thing I did? I started treating my folder like a sacred text. I stored it in a cloud drive only I could access, encrypted, and backed up twice. I carried a flash drive with me, always, sometimes even home in my purse, tucked between my keys and my lip balm. I never left it on my desk, never let it near the company network. Because I knew, if Lucas ever saw it, he'd try to delete it. And that folder wasn't just paper or notes, it was my defense, my leverage, my legacy. It held 2 years of handwritten client facts, patterns, pain points, preferences, human truths that couldn't be digitized. It was everything I knew about the people who kept our company alive. Every relationship, every kind interaction that Lucas thought was just padding in a call. So yes, I tolerated his smugness, his jabs in meetings when he said things like, "Some people here are clinging to outdated methods." His passive-aggressive comments like, "Once we finish digitizing client comms, we can remove the fluff." I smiled politely when he called my calls fluff. But every time he tried to cut a corner, I doubled down on the one thing he couldn't replicate: connection. I started calling clients more often, not to check boxes, but just to check in. I sent handwritten cards, thanked them for referrals, remembered their work anniversaries. When one client mentioned they were nervous about a new supplier in Jakarta, I scheduled a casual Friday coffee Zoom just to talk through concerns. I built relationships so solid, so personal, that no scheduling portal or chatbot could pry them away. And every time I added another note to my folder, I felt stronger. Anthony Weiss. Son just got his MBA. Ask about it. He's proud but pretends he's not. Elena Bianchi. Hates being called during Italian lunch hours. Her mom still cooks for her every day at noon. Ask how Nona is. Donovan K. Hates filling out forms. Prefers to send voice memos. I transcribe and handle the rest. He always ends messages with, "Thanks, B." These weren't just lines in a database. They were connections. And Lucas didn't even know they existed. But I did. And I guarded that folder like a knight guards a sword. Because I knew that when the day came, when Lucas finally summoned the courage to pull the trigger and make me disappear, he would find out what that folder really was. It wasn't just my proof. It was his undoing. And in the meantime, I would smile in meetings. I would take notes. I would act like the loyal, harmless secretary he believed I was. Let him underestimate me. Because the more he ignored the relationships I held, the stronger they became, and the louder the silence would be when they left with me. I had felt it coming for weeks. Lucas had stopped copying me on emails, stopped inviting me to meetings, even ones where my input used to be central. He passed by my desk without a glance. I'd become a ghost in my own office, visible but irrelevant. But when it finally came, I was still surprised by how quietly it happened. A Monday morning, like any other. I came in 5 minutes early, made my usual tea, checked my inbox. That's when I saw it. A printed envelope, placed not by HR, but slipped onto my desk after hours. No official meeting, no warning. Just a single white page with my name at the top and one soulless sentence. Effective immediately, your position has been terminated due to departmental restructuring. No signature, no "thank you for your service." Just ink on a page, cold as Lucas's handshake. I sat for a moment, letting the words settle. All around me, the office hummed with keyboards, soft murmurs, the clinking of mugs. Julia from accounting glanced over and then away again quickly. Someone in logistics pretended to be on a call. No one moved. I closed my laptop, opened my drawer, and pulled out the one thing that still mattered: the folder. I didn't take pictures off the wall, didn't pack pens or paperweights, just one box, and that folder inside it, pressed against my chest like armor. I stood and walked out. No tantrum, no drama. Let Lucas enjoy his hollow victory. He had deleted a job title. He hadn't deleted me. 3 hours later, I sat in the sun-drenched office of Kelbridge Global. The receptionist hadn't even asked why I was there. One look at my name had been enough. "Ms. Kells is expecting you." Rhonda Kells was everything Lucas wasn't. Sharp, steady, and quiet, in a way that made you lean in to listen. She didn't offer pleasantries. She offered power. "I've been hearing rumors," she said, leaning back in her chair. "You were the glue at Vanarax." "I was the bloodstream," I corrected her calmly, "and they just cut their own circulation." Rhonda smiled faintly. "And what do you want?" I placed the folder on the table between us. I didn't open it yet. I'm not here to reapply for the job I lost. I'm not a secretary, I'm a strategist. I know what your competitors are doing wrong. I know what clients are missing. I can tell you which 5 accounts are already looking for alternatives, and who they'll go to if I don't step in. She raised an eyebrow. That's a bold claim. I met her gaze. It's not a claim, it's a promise. I tapped the folder once. I built those relationships, not the company, not the CRM. Me. You give me a title with teeth, and I'll bring them to your door. Rhonda didn't hesitate. Client relations negotiator, she said. Full autonomy, competitive salary, double what you were making. You'll report directly to me. I blinked. She wasn't just offering me a job, she was offering me a launch pad. And your start date? She added. Let's give you a few days to rest. Come in fresh. She stood and extended her hand. I shook it, steady and strong. This time, I didn't look away. That night, I walked home slowly, deliberately, like the city belonged to me again. I didn't answer any emails. I didn't check LinkedIn. I sat on my couch with a cup of chamomile tea in silence. Not the anxious kind I'd gotten used to, the kind that crept into your stomach and whispered, "They'll take this from you too." No, this silence was warm, quietly powerful, because for the first time in years, I had a day off ahead of me, and for the first time ever, I had a future I'd built for myself. The next morning, I woke up with sunlight filtering through the blinds and no alarm buzzing in my ear. I made pancakes for the first time in forever, sat outside with my tea, and watched people rush to their desks, watched emails go unopened, phones unanswered. Let them run. Let them automate, digitize, restructure, because in 5 days I would be back, not behind a desk, but at the front of the room, not taking notes, but writing terms. I didn't need Vanaraks, but they were about to remember how badly they'd needed me, and how quickly I could show their clients the door. It started like a whisper. Just one call, one connection. A gentle tug on a thread I knew would unravel everything Lucas had tried to stitch together with code and arrogance. My first official act as client relations negotiator at Kelbridge Global wasn't a sales pitch. It wasn't even a proposal. It was a simple email to an old contact. Subject: just checking in, hey Constance. I know you've probably been bombarded with scheduling links lately, but I figured I'd ask the old-fashioned way. How are things? How's the expansion in Toronto going? Bridget. She responded within the hour. Oh my God, Bridget. Where have you been? I've been screaming into the void for 2 weeks, trying to get someone at Vanaraks to answer a question about freight costs, and all I get is AI-generated replies and waitlists for someone named Caleb. That was all it took. I called her. We didn't talk logistics for the first 10 minutes. We talked about her mother's birthday party, the unexpected success of her new denim line, and the Toronto weather. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Are you with someone new? I smiled into the phone. I am. Send me the papers, she said. I'm done with the robots. And that's how it began. Quietly. Personally. Gavin and Terry Lint came next. I remembered their preferred shipment insulation methods, something Lucas's new CRM didn't. I remembered the time their son's health crisis meant delaying a pallet and waiving a penalty, which I approved discreetly. They hadn't forgotten either. Roderick from the bookstores didn't need convincing. They started calling me Richard in automated emails. I corrected it 3 times. I'm tired, Bridget. I just want to feel like a person again. I told him he always had been. By the end of week 1, 4 clients had left Vanaraks. By the end of week 2, it was 8. And Lucas noticed, because on the 3rd Monday morning, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said to answer. Bridget. That voice. Slick, tight, forced calm. It's Lucas. I didn't respond. He cleared his throat. Look, we've noticed a few unusual client shifts recently. Some significant accounts are suddenly moving. Naturally, we're concerned. I waited. Let the silence hang. We'd like to discuss the nature of your new role. Any use of proprietary systems or client lists would be a clear violation. I cut him off. You think I took your spreadsheets? He paused. We have documentation showing. I didn't need your documentation, Lucas. I listened. For 2 years, while you were busy streamlining operations, I was building relationships, and now those people are choosing to follow the person they trust. You don't understand what you're doing, he snapped. You're destabilizing things. This isn't professional. Oh, I think it's very professional, I said, voice calm, because I'm doing the same job I did at Vanarax. Only now I'm getting paid and respected for it. The silence stretched. Then he said, quieter, We underestimated your role. I nearly laughed. No, Lucas, you didn't underestimate me. You erased me. And now you're watching what happens when the foundation you ignored walks out the door. I hung up. Later that afternoon, I got a message from Julia, the accountant who used to slip me chocolates during month-end chaos. Bridget, you have no idea what's happening here. Lucas is unraveling. We had 3 emergency meetings this morning. He's blaming AT, blaming sales, even blamed the weather for one client cancellation. Someone finally asked, what did Bridget know that we didn't? And the room went dead silent. I stared at the message for a long time, not with gloating, with something deeper. Because it was never about revenge. Not really. It was about showing them that what they called soft skills were the only thing holding the company together. That night, I went for a walk. No destination, just movement, just breath. The air was cool and quiet, like the world itself had taken a moment to step aside and let me pass. Lucas was scrambling to plug holes in a ship he never knew was leaking. And I was just getting started. It was just a folder. That's what Lucas Varick had said to me with that smug little grin. The day he kicked me out of the office I had practically built with nothing but my memory, intuition, and relentless care. I hope that folder helps you find a new job. He didn't know what was in it. He didn't even care to ask. But now it was all he could think about. The fall began with confusion, then panic. Week 4 into my new job at Kelbridge, and 12 major accounts had already shifted over. Not a mass exodus all at once, but a steady, deliberate tide. One after another. Clean breaks. All sealed with contracts that listed me as the preferred liaison. The reports started flooding Lucas's inbox. Client dropped communication. Account unresponsive to outreach. Failed to log in to portal in 30 days. Lucas tried everything. He restructured the sales teams, offered new discounts, tried to initiate mass Zoom calls with old clients using his new portal. But no one answered, because no one wanted another robotic message. No one wanted dear valued partner. They wanted the voice that remembered birthdays, the eyes that caught compliance issues before they became problems, the person who didn't need a CRM to know what time zone you lived in. They wanted me. Julia, ever my quiet observer in accounting, filled me in on what happened the day it all caught up with him. It was a Tuesday. Lucas had called for another emergency strategy session with the executive team. She sat just outside the boardroom as the muffled shouting began. At first, it was typical Lucas. Deflection, deflection, deflection. It's fault. The back end wasn't migrated properly. Sales dropped the ball. They didn't follow up. These clients were never loyal anyway. They were weak contracts. But the executives weren't buying it anymore. They had the numbers. Revenue had taken a nosedive. Client satisfaction plummeted from 87% to 39% in just 3 weeks. And worst of all, when they called the clients personally, they got the same quiet, cutting response. We're with Bridget now. One of the founders, a man named Grant with a voice like gravel, cut through the excuses. Lucas, when you came in, you said we were inefficient. You said automation would elevate the client experience. Instead, we've lost half our major accounts in a month. Can you explain that? Lucas fumbled. Slides, graphs, spreadsheets. Until someone else asked, calmly, with precision, what was in the folder she took? Julia said. Lucas froze. Literally froze. Mid-sentence. Then slowly lowered the remote in his hand. Notes, he whispered. Just client notes. The room went quiet. Then Grant said, You mean the relationships we relied on? The trust? The nuance? The glue? Lucas tried to protest, said the CRM had all the same information. But the truth had already landed, because everyone in that room knew, deep down, they'd let him erase the one person who had kept the entire house from collapsing. He left the room without another word, stormed into his office, closed the blinds. Julia walked by a few minutes later and heard him. Not yelling, not calling lawyers or swearing at assistants. Crying. Small, broken sobs. Because he finally understood. That folder he laughed at? It held everything he didn't believe in. The human moments. The loyalty. The insight no system could code. And now it was gone. And so was he. By the end of the week, Lucas was gone. No goodbye email. No farewell party. Not even a Slack message. Just an empty office, a deactivated badge, and a short internal memo. Effective immediately, Lucas Varick is no longer with the company. The rumor mill worked overtime. Some said the board forced him out. Others said he was escorted out after trying to access confidential emails. One theory claimed he tried to call a few clients personally to win them back, and got nothing but silence in return. But one thing was clear. He was done, worse than fired, blacklisted. Because when you lose that many top-tier clients and leave behind nothing but damage, word spreads. Fast. The same recruiters who once fought over him were suddenly unresponsive. His LinkedIn grew quiet. Nobody returned his calls. A man once obsessed with controlling perception had lost control of his own narrative. All because he thought people were replaceable. All because he thought I was just a secretary with a smile. I didn't celebrate, not publicly. I just went home that night, poured a glass of red wine, and sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker on, one by one. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was validation. A quiet, steady peace in knowing that when you do your work with integrity, when you build things with care, even if no one notices, you leave behind something real. And when someone tries to tear that down without understanding it, they're the ones who collapse. I was on my way to a client lunch, one of the good ones, the kind where they already knew they were signing, and the meal was just a formality, when I got the message. Not from a client. Not from Rhonda. Not even from Julia, who kept me updated like a loyal informant. No, this message came from a law firm. The subject line was sterile and blunt. Notice of potential litigation. I pulled over. My heart didn't race. Not immediately. But there was a tight, quiet weight in my chest, like a storm cloud pressing down. The letter was attached as a PDF. I opened it right there in my car. Dear Ms. Moreau, we represent Vanarax Inc. in a matter concerning the alleged misappropriation of proprietary client information and direct solicitation of Vanarax clients in potential breach of non-disclosure and non-compete terms previously agreed upon. You are hereby requested to cease and desist any and all direct engagement with former Vanarax clients effective immediately. Failure to comply may result in formal litigation. Sincerely, Anders, Locke and Beckett, LLP. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not because it wasn't serious, it was, but because I could already see Lucas's fingerprints all over it. Desperate, sloppy, emotional. He thought this would scare me. He thought a letter on crisp legal paper would undo the fact that clients had chosen me. That they'd followed not a thief, but someone who remembered their story. Still, I forwarded the letter to Rhonda with the subject line, "Guess who's mad now?" She called within 15 minutes. First of all, she said, don't respond to anything directly. Our legal team's already on it. Understood, I said. But for the record, I didn't steal anything. I built relationships. I didn't take a single file, a single contract, a single login. I know, she said calmly. So does our counsel. There was a pause. But Lucas clearly doesn't. The next week was tense, but I never stopped working. Kelbridge's lawyers responded immediately, formally denying all accusations and stating clearly that no confidential data had been transferred. Only public contact information and prior personal relationships developed organically over time. And Rhonda? She stood behind me. She made it known, internally and externally, that this was a woman they trusted, that any attack on me was an attack on the entire future of their client strategy. Still, it wasn't easy. Some clients grew nervous. One called me in a panic. "I heard Lucas is trying to sue you. Should we back off?" I answered calmly. "Lucas is upset that the house he burned down is now being rebuilt by someone else. But I haven't done anything illegal. You're here because you chose to be, and that choice is still yours." There was a long silence on the other end. Then a small chuckle. "You really are as composed as they say." Then came the misstep. A leaked email. Someone on the Vanarax board leaked a message Lucas had sent before the lawsuit went out. In it, he admitted, bluntly, that he had no proof of actual theft, but that initiating legal pressure may slow the losses and scare her off. It made the rounds in industry circles fast. Suddenly, I wasn't the thief. I was the woman being threatened for doing her job too well. And Lucas? He was the executive who tried to weaponize fear when strategy failed. The letter was quietly withdrawn 3 days later. No apology, no explanation, just silence. Rhonda called me into her office that Friday. She didn't say much, just looked up from her laptop and smiled. "Well handled," she said. I nodded. "We knew he'd try something." "Yes," she agreed. "We just didn't think he'd self-destruct while doing it." That night, I sat on my couch, folder in my lap. Not the original paper one. It had long been replaced by digital files, encrypted and stored safely. But I still kept the physical version. Not because I needed it, because it reminded me that the truth always lives in the details. Lucas never learned that. And now, his legal scare tactic had backfired. Publicly and permanently. I didn't expect it to go all the way to court. Not after Lucas's leaked email. Not after Vanarax's silent retreat. But ego has its own gravity, and Lucas wasn't about to accept defeat without one last attempt to salvage whatever fragments of power he thought he had left. They filed anyway. The claim was formal now. Unlawful solicitation, misappropriation of proprietary client data, breach of loyalty. Kelbridge's legal team responded like a machine, cold, precise, impenetrable. Rhonda barely flinched. "Let them come," she said with a shrug. "We have the facts. They have assumptions." And I wasn't afraid. I knew what I had done. More importantly, I knew what I hadn't. The hearing was closed, but I still remember every minute of it. Their lawyer was theatrical, trying to turn my handwritten client notes into some sort of spy novel. She took knowledge built on company time, about company clients, and used it to benefit a competitor. She carried out a coordinated poaching effort from within. He waved a printout of one of my notes, enlarged and stapled for effect. "Vernon prefers calls before 10 a.m. and hates being addressed as Sir. Talks about his greyhound, Pepper. Had a shipment delayed once by 3 hours and still remembers it." He turned toward the judge. "How is this not confidential company information?" My attorney, a quiet woman named Lena, with a soft voice and steel eyes, stood calmly. She passed the judge a folder. "Your Honor, the company had all the client emails, all the contracts, all the shipment logs. But these notes, these were not created from internal data systems. These are not reports pulled from proprietary software. These are handwritten, individually observed, interpersonal details gathered through organic conversations, on breaks, in passing, from memory." She flipped the page. "We have sworn statements from 6 former clients stating that these details were never requested or stored by Vanarax. These are not company records. These are relational observations." Then she leaned forward. "You cannot own someone's memory." The judge was quiet. She looked through the notes, then at me. Ms. Moreau, did you take any files, contracts, or customer account databases with you upon termination? No, Your Honor, I said clearly. Just this folder, my own notes. I didn't even keep the company coffee mug. Lena cracked the slightest smile beside me. The judge nodded slowly. I see no breach of confidentiality here. These notes are personal. No evidence has been presented showing theft of company data. The clients followed her because they trusted her, not because she stole them. Case dismissed. Just like that. No drama, no gavel slam, but it echoed like thunder. I walked out of the courthouse into crisp air, my coat wrapped around me, the sun just beginning to pierce the gray. Rhonda was waiting by the steps. She didn't say, "I told you so." She just handed me a coffee. "Cream, 2 sugars," she said. Of course, I smiled. Because she knew how I liked it. Because she listened. Because she got it. Unlike Lucas. As for him, he didn't even show up to the hearing. Cowardice rarely likes witnesses. A few days later, a mutual contact sent me a screenshot. Lucas had scrubbed his job title from LinkedIn. His inbox was deactivated. Someone else had been listed as interim head of operations. He was gone. For real this time. Not just from Vanarax, but from this world. The world where people still believed in relationships, in loyalty, in work done with care. He'd tried to erase me, but the only thing he erased was himself. It didn't happen with a trumpet or a parade, no confetti, no dramatic boardroom announcement. Just a quiet Tuesday morning, a neatly sealed envelope, and a nod from Rhonda. I'd been called into her office under the pretense of a client escalation review. I brought my notes, my laptop, 3 pens. I was already preparing for a battle I didn't need to fight. Instead, she stood up, handed me the envelope, and said the words that made my heart stop. Effective immediately, you're the new director of strategic negotiations. The words sat in the air like they didn't want to land. Me? Director? I opened the envelope with careful fingers, scanning the page. A significant raise. Executive-level benefits. My own budget. A small team reporting directly to me. Travel perks, flexible scheduling, and, best of all, final say over client retention protocols. You earned this, Rhonda added. Frankly, you've been doing this job for a month. Now you just get the title and the authority that should have come with it. She reached into her desk drawer and handed me a keycard. New office is upstairs. Window view. I smiled, stunned, grateful, and suddenly very aware of the weight that had lifted from my shoulders. For 2 years, I had made things run while people ignored me. Now I would be the person they couldn't ignore. But where there's light, there's shadow. Lucas didn't take his downfall gracefully. He couldn't. His pride was too brittle to survive silence, let alone the sound of my name in every corner of the industry. He went quiet for a while, but not gone. The first shot came through a freelance journalist. A tech business blogger contacted me, requesting comment on an anonymous tip alleging that your client poaching violated industry ethics. The phrasing was laughable. When I asked who the source was, he paused and said, "Off the record? A guy who used to work with you. Name rhymes with mucus." Charming. I declined to comment. The story never ran. Then came a LinkedIn post from an unverified account claiming I'd falsified my credentials, that I never had a degree in international relations, that I'd lied my way into Kelbridge. The account had 2 followers and was deleted by the next morning. Still, it didn't stop there. Kelbridge's IT flagged multiple login attempts on my archived email. Then someone submitted a request for my personnel file through a fake HR vendor domain. It all pointed back to burner IP addresses, but one detail slipped through. A dummy phone number registered to an address in Lucas's old neighborhood. Sloppy, panicked, and unsuccessful. Rhonda's legal team compiled everything. They didn't press charges, but they did send a very official cease and desist, with a quiet warning that if Lucas tried anything else, he'd be buried in more than silence. Meanwhile, Vanarax bled. Their quarterly report leaked. Revenues were down 43%. Client attrition hit an all-time high. Morale tanked. A new interim director had taken over, someone who inherited a shell of what the company used to be. And Lucas? He wasn't just fired, he was blacklisted. I heard he applied for a job at a smaller logistics firm in Seattle, one of Kelbridge's sister companies. They sent his resume straight to Rhonda. She passed it to me with a sticky note that said, "Should I write the reference?" I laughed. Then I said, "No need, let silence speak." My promotion came with a corner office. Not huge, not flashy, but it had floor-to-ceiling windows and a door I could close when I needed quiet. My name was on the glass. Bridget Moreau, Director of Strategic Negotiations. The first day I sat behind that desk, I ran my fingers along its edge and smiled. Not because I finally had power, but because I finally had recognition, and I'd earned every inch of it. Not with manipulation, not with shortcuts, with consistency, with care, with all the little things no one thought mattered, until they did. One morning, I spoke at an industry summit. My topic, why relationships still win in a digital world. I walked off the stage to applause, and there, in the back row, I saw him. Lucas. Hair shorter, thinner, no badge on his chest, just a man in a cheap suit trying not to be seen. He locked eyes with me for half a second. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, didn't even nod, because I didn't need to. He was a lesson now, not a threat. And I was the proof of everything he didn't understand. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened a drawer in my office. Inside was the original folder, the one I carried out on the day I was fired, the one he laughed at. I opened it gently, flipping through the pages. Vernon. Still hates being called Sir. New Greyhound's name is Comet. Elena. Sent her a cookbook for her birthday. She cried on the phone. Tempest. Opened a third location, still allergic to mango. I smiled. Then I closed the folder and placed it back in the drawer. I didn't need it anymore, because now the whole company was built on the foundation I used to carry alone. And if anyone ever forgot what mattered, they'd find me in the office upstairs. Director, leader, listener, the woman who turned a folder into a future.